That's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine. Hello, everybody. Let's engage. Welcome back to the Star Trek Litverse. We are diving back into the relaunch novels of Star Trek Enterprise, which you can consider basically seasons 5 and 6. And we are continuing on the Romulan threat. Last time we read The Good That Men Do, which was bringing us back to having Tucker come retcon from his death to be working for Section 31 and seeing more of the Romulan crisis that was spreading. And here we start with Kobayashi Maru, which continues that storyline. Also, the big thing with this, Kobayashi Maru, not the test that, later Kirk would win in the way that Kirk loves to win. But with his no-win scenario, this is actually just a ship titled the Kobayashi Maru. I may have been inspiration for said test, but it is not the test. It's too early for that. But the big thing with this is that there are attacks on allies of the coalition, seemingly by the Klingons. It is, of course, not by the Klingons. It is subterfuge. It is the Romulans who are gaining access to control ships of other people and trying to cause crisis amongst the allied worlds, so that way there can be war, but with the wrong people. So that way the Romulans can sweep in and take victory. This is very much the Cold War, but in space, basically. And that's basically all that really, that's the core gist of this plot. With that, we have Archer's frustrations, because it seems like for so long, season 3 onward, this man wanted to be an explorer, like Kirk, like Picard. And he's consistently not allowed to do this. He's consistently being forced into this sort of war situations. It is actually quite a miracle that the Federation will come to exist because of everything that Archer has to go through. It's surprising that it manages to still happen. But that makes for good drama. And then, of course, we have T'Pol and her rising emotions of her lover and being in Romulan space and her not be able to really do anything about that. A little bit more love for Reed, though still not very much. Hoshi and Travis continue to just be there, not adding much, sadly. We have, of course, Trip continuing to be a Romulan in disguise. And that's about it. A little bit more political intrigue between the Romulans and each other and with the rest of the galaxy. But by and large, feels like an episode of a stepping stone toward the big arc of a war against the Romulans, a gigantic Cold War in space. Overall, it's really solid. I actually read through this pretty quickly, a lot faster than Good That Men Do. It was pretty snappy, pretty fast, and I rather enjoyed it. And it's not phenomenal or anything, but it was solid, and it's a necessary stepping point to the next big arc, which is the Romulan War duology. It's kind of all one story, so overall, do I recommend it? If you're going to start the Enterprise relaunch novels, then absolutely. I mean, this is your season 5 and 6. It's this huge Romulan War arc, and the next big thing is Rise to the Federation. Like, that is the seasons that we're never going to get. So, unless they do it animated, because those actors are getting a bit too old to reprise their roles now. Unless they just pulled we're making another season, but it takes place like 30 years later. Like, I don't know if anybody would want to watch that, because there's not really anything interesting going on during that time, because they make the Federation, and then there's kind of peace amongst everyone until the Klingon War, of Discovery, if we're even counting Discovery. Though, of course, we know that some Klingon war has to happen because the original show mentions such things. So, obviously, that happens in between, regardless if we count Discovery or not. But, regardless, there really wouldn't be any. I don't think there's really anything interesting timeline wise to discuss if they were to make a reboot show taking place like 30 years later. Almost 30 years later. I mean, it came out, what, 2000? It's 2025. Like, the show's not coming back. So if you want your season 5 and 6 of Enterprise, this is it. This is what you need to read. I mean, I understand it's not like the expanded universe where it was, canon, not canon, whatever. Fiction is yours to take what you will, and you are most likely never getting a sequel season to Enterprise. So if you want more Enterprise, and you want a book that still feels like the characters, this is it. So I do recommend it, and I hope you read it. And let me know what you think if you've read it in the comment section below. I'm going to get into spoilers if you don't want any spoilers. Now it's time to go. I don't have too many. But we get to catch up with Erica Hernandez. Because her and Archer are kind of just set in the beginning to protect cargo ships because they keep getting attacked by pirates. The Coalition, no matter what, they still won't accept the Romulans as a threat. They don't have any concrete proof, so they refuse to go forward with Archer's, rantings. We also learn that Archer and T'Pol just aren't very close anymore. And it actually is very meta because it mentions, it doesn't say it explicitly, but Travis doesn't get a lot of love. He gets a couple episodes here and there, but it's never really about him, and even when it is about him, it's kind of boring because they don't do much with him. Same thing with Hoshi, right? And it even acknowledges that within the show, everybody's cordial, everyone's on good terms, but Archer hasn't really made a deep friendship with Hoshi or Travis or even Reed, really. The only ones he's actively invested time and energy into and we're bottom of the barrel, maybe Phlox, but then T'Pol. He already knew Tucker from before they even started the show, so that relationship is kind of already built in there. So the only really person he invested emotional time into was T'Pol. But with Tucker gone, she's dealing with her own stuff, he's dealing with his stuff, and so she also feels betrayed because, of course, she's a Oopsie, she's a Vulcan. Of course, she's logical. She'll keep working with Archer, but she does feel a sense of betrayal. And even if she was meant to be if she was a little bit more vulnerable with Archer, this is sort of barrier that's been placed now because he lied to her about Tucker. Or about Trip, sorry. I guess else is Tucker. Anyway. So there's a little bit of a barrier there. So Archer feels alone because he's not very close to T'Pol anymore because of that. And he's not close to the rest of his crew, and there's no Trip, so he just feels alone. Trip continues to be in Romulan space trying to make sure that they can't make Warp 7, because if they make Warp 7 at this point in time, it's kind of game over for the fledgling, later-to-be Federation. Aaron, the Romulan guy that Trip was working with, ends up dying. The Romulans suspect Trip of being a double agent. They think he's a Vulcan double agent, though. They don't think that he's a human or anything. But they do expect, they suspect him to be, not actually Romulan. But they also recognize his, how useful he is. And so they keep him on board, to help with stuff, and not letting him realize that they know that they're onto him. Reed helps T'Pol steal a shuttle to save Trip, because she gets these sort of visions now that she's mind melded with Trip, and sees that he's in danger, which also heavily upsets Archer, of course, because they don't consult him about it, they just kind of do it. There's this kind of poignant line I really liked. It kind of harks back to what I already said. But Archer complains about how he wanted to be an explorer and not a soldier. And Erica Hernandez says, well, maybe it's not for us to be, these happy-go-lucky explorers. Maybe that's for the next generation. I mean, I thought that was well done. Even though, I mean, there's no war in the original series. But they do have a bunch of conflicts. Discovery, there's a war in season 1 at least. Then, I mean, TNG, I guess, never explicitly has a war, but they do go up against the Borg. And then Deep Space Nine heavily involves a war, so yes and no in terms of the next generation just getting to be explorers. Poor T'Pol. Now, I know a lot of people, because I'll look at reviews after the fact, a lot of people think it's like out of character for T'Pol to have feelings. She's not a robot, right? She has feelings, right? She just suppresses them. But here's the thing. This is a novel, not television. And in a novel, you can see what people are thinking and feeling because it's a novel. So the fact that I can know what T'Pol's thinking doesn't bother me. The fact that I can know what she's feeling doesn't bother me. Because whenever she is out loud presenting herself to other people, she remains consistently the same as she would in an episode of television. It's just that I get a little bit more of an intimate situation with her because I'm able to be inside her head. So I don't think that's an issue. But, she does, of course, they save Trip. But Trip is thankful, but he doesn't want to come back because he feels he still has an important mission to do there. So they have to leave a Trip. And, T'Pol, she just worries about his safety and wants him around and frankly loves him, even if she doesn't say so. Though there's this really cute, kind of cringe, male fantasy. I don't know if it's a male fantasy, but, it's kind of cringe, but it was also kind of cute. But Trip and her start making out, fiercely. Although I think it was T'Pol who initiated it, which I think is just character development. I think that's good. And Reed's like, I'm gonna leave for 20 minutes. You two aren't even paying attention to me. I'm gonna go. And then T'Pol stops. She looks at Reed. She goes 30 minutes, and then he leaves. And then Trip's like, wonder what we're gonna do in 30 minutes. And then she says, don't waste time talking. And she starts taking off his shirt. So they did the dirty tango. But good. I sincerely hope that by the end of Rise of the Federation, when all is said and done, that T'Pol and Trip just get to be happy together. They deserve that. They really do. I hope that's how the series ends. I want them happy and together. I will refuse to accept anything else. They best be happy together. They deserve it so much. That's all I gotta say on the matter. Lastly, near the end, Trip ends up having to shoot some Romulans in the back and murder them because they have plans of sabotaging people he cares about. And he knows with definitive proof they're going to, so he stops it before it can be enacted. But he feels quite guilty about it. He didn't face them face to face. He shot them in the back. And while he feels guilt, he can feel himself changing. A metamorphosis, if you will. There's somebody that even his parents wouldn't recognize. And I think, if anything, while it is more of a background sort of thing, it is something that is being done expertly well. I didn't know how I felt about it in The Good That Men Do. Because that's not Trip. That's a Reed thing. And you'd be absolutely right. However, they made clear, objective reasons for why it needed to be Trip. But still, Trip doesn't feel like a Section 31 type character. Here's the transition, though. He's been stuck in space for 6 months, a year now, as a Romulan. He's been stuck with only Romulans. It's changing him. Being surrounded by only those types of people for so long. The decisions he has to make while undercover is affecting him. It is morphing him. It is changing him to the point where now, depending on how these next two books go and the rise of the Federation, I could fully buy the fact that Tucker is turning into an effective Section 31 kind of like spy person. Which again, initially, yeah, that's a Reed thing. But I like how it's kind of evolving Trip into a character to fit that mold. I mean, it still feels like Trip, never doesn't feel like him, but there's character progression in him to explain sort of why no, it's a better storyline for Trip to be the one to do this, and I think it is working really well. I'm curious to see how it will all conclude with the next two books. But with the next two books, we begin the Romulan War, the one we heard about in TOS originally when we had the first Romulan episode. So I'll be curious to see how that all unfolds. So I look forward to talking to you about that when we get there. But until then, live long and prosper. And I'll see you in the next one. So let's go explore some new civilizations and new novels. Talk about together next time. Till then.